Sarah Martinez walked through the crowded military academy hallway, her head held high despite the whispers that followed her every step. The scars on her left arm and face told a story that most people couldn't understand, but they all had opinions about them anyway. "Look at her trying to act tough," whispered Jessica, one of the popular cadets, loud enough for Sarah to hear. "Those marks make her look like a monster." Sarah's jaw tightened, but she kept walking. The scars were from a house fire when she was 12 years old. She had rushed back into the burning building to save her younger brother Tommy, who was trapped under a fallen beam. The flames had licked at her skin, leaving permanent reminders of that terrifying night. But Tommy was alive because of her choice, and that was worth every mark. The military academy was supposed to be her fresh start. After years of being stared at and judged in her hometown, she thought things would be different here. People would focus on her skills, her determination, her leadership qualities. Instead, the cruel comments seemed to follow her everywhere. During combat training, her partner Marcus deliberately avoided looking at her scarred face. "Can you actually fight properly with those injuries?" he asked rudely. "I don't want to get paired with someone who can't keep up." Sarah proved him wrong by completing every exercise flawlessly, but his words still stung. She had worked twice as hard as everyone else to get into this academy. Her test scores were perfect, her physical fitness was excellent, and her recommendations were outstanding. Yet all anyone seemed to notice were the marks on her skin. In the dining hall, she often ate alone. Other cadets would glance at her scars and quickly look away, as if her appearance made them uncomfortable. Some made cruel jokes about her looking like she had been through a war zone. If only they knew that in many ways, she had been. Sarah's roommate Emma was one of the few people who treated her normally. "Don't listen to them," Emma said one evening as Sarah stared at herself in the mirror. "They're just shallow. Anyone with half a brain can see you're tougher than all of them combined." But the constant rejection was wearing Sarah down. She had always been strong, but facing daily mockery and isolation was harder than any physical challenge she had ever encountered. Some nights, she wondered if she had made a mistake coming here. The academy's social structure was brutal. There were the popular cadets who came from military families, the athletes who dominated sports competitions, and the academics who excelled in strategy courses. Then there was Sarah, who didn't fit neatly into any group because her appearance made people uncomfortable. During group assignments, she was often the last one chosen. In study groups, people would make excuses to work elsewhere. Even the instructors sometimes seemed to avoid making direct eye contact with her, though they never said anything inappropriate. Sarah threw herself into her studies and training with fierce determination. She aced every exam, dominated obstacle courses, and showed natural leadership abilities that impressed even the toughest instructors. But academic and physical excellence couldn't shield her from the social cruelty of her peers. The worst incident happened during a formal dinner event. Sarah had dressed carefully in her best uniform, hoping to blend in with the other cadets. She was standing near the refreshment table when a group of popular cadets approached. "Did you see the new horror movie?" one of them said loudly, pretending not to notice Sarah. "The monster in it reminds me of someone, but I can't quite place who." The group erupted in laughter, and Sarah felt her cheeks burn with humiliation. She wanted to disappear, to run back to her room and hide. Instead, she straightened her shoulders and walked away with as much dignity as she could manage. That night, she sat on her bed writing a letter to her parents. She was ready to quit, ready to give up on her dreams of becoming a military officer. The constant mockery and isolation were breaking down her spirit in ways that physical pain never could. But as she wrote, she thought about Tommy and the night that had changed everything. She remembered the moment she decided to run back into that burning house, knowing the risks but unable to live with herself if she didn't try to save him. That decision had cost her, but it had also revealed something important about who she was. Sarah tore up the letter. She wasn't ready to give up yet. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But she had survived worse things than cruel words and shallow judgments. The scars on her body were proof of her courage, even if nobody else could see it that way. Little did she know that everything was about to change. A new instructor was arriving at the academy, someone whose own experiences would help him see past the surface to recognize the true warrior that Sarah had always been. General Robert Hayes arrived at the academy on a cold Monday morning, his distinguished uniform bearing the marks of 3 decades of military service. He was known throughout the armed forces as a fair but demanding leader who could spot potential in even the most unlikely candidates. The academy director, Colonel Williams, gave him a tour of the facilities. "We have some excellent cadets this year," the colonel said proudly. "The Morrison boy comes from a long line of generals, and Lisa Chen has already broken several academy records." General Hayes nodded politely, but he was more interested in observing the cadets during their daily routines than hearing about family connections or record holders. True leadership, he had learned, often emerged from unexpected places. During his first week, he noticed Sarah immediately. Not because of her scars, but because of the way she carried herself. While other cadets chatted and joked during breaks, she maintained perfect military posture. When others complained about difficult exercises, she pushed through without a word. He watched her during combat training and was impressed by her technique and focus. She moved with precision and confidence, showing no hesitation even when facing opponents who were larger and stronger. Her tactical thinking during simulation exercises was exceptional, often finding creative solutions that others missed. But what struck him most was how isolated she seemed. During meals, she sat alone while other cadets clustered in animated groups. In the hallways, people gave her a wide berth, some staring at her scars when they thought she wasn't looking. General Hayes had seen this behavior before in various units, and it always disappointed him. The military was supposed to be about judging people by their actions and character, not their appearance. Yet even in professional settings, he had witnessed the cruel ways that people could treat those who looked different. One afternoon, he overheard a conversation that made his blood boil. A group of cadets were discussing weekend plans when one of them pointed towards Sarah, who was studying alone at a corner table. "We should invite Frankenstein to the party," one cadet said with a cruel laugh. "She could be our Halloween decoration." "That's terrible," another replied, but she was giggling as she said it. "Though I guess she wouldn't need a costume." The comments continued, each one more heartless than the last. General Hayes felt a familiar anger rising in his chest. He had zero tolerance for this kind of behavior, especially toward someone who was clearly working harder than everyone else around her. That evening, he reviewed Sarah's file more carefully. Her entrance exam scores were in the top 5%. Her physical fitness ratings were excellent. Her letters of recommendation painted a picture of someone with exceptional character and determination. The file also contained a brief note about the origin of her scars. General Hayes read about the house fire, about a 12-year-old girl who had risked everything to save her younger brother. The doctors had said she was lucky to survive, let alone recover well enough to pursue a military career. As he read, memories of his own experiences came flooding back. Early in his career, he had served with a soldier named Martinez, who had been badly burned in an explosion while saving his squad mates. That soldier had faced similar cruel treatment from some of his fellow servicemen. General Hayes remembered how Martinez had struggled not just with his physical recovery, but with the emotional impact of being constantly stared at and whispered about. Despite his heroic actions, some people couldn't see past his changed appearance to recognize the brave man underneath. The general had been young then, too uncertain of his own authority to speak up as forcefully as he should have. He had regretted that silence for years afterward, especially when Martinez eventually left the service earlier than planned, worn down by the constant social rejection. Looking at Sarah's file, he saw echoes of that same story beginning to repeat itself. Here was another young person with genuine heroism in her past and clear potential for leadership, being driven away by the shallow cruelty of others. But this time, he was in a position to do something about it. As the new senior instructor, he had the authority and experience to address the situation properly. More importantly, he had learned from his past mistakes and was determined not to let another promising soldier be destroyed by other people's ignorance. The next morning, General Hayes made his first official appearance before the entire cadet corps. As he looked out at the assembled young faces, his eyes found Sarah in the third row. She sat with perfect posture, attention focused entirely on him, while the cadets around her seemed more interested in checking their phones or whispering to friends. He began his address with the standard introduction about military values and academy expectations. But as he spoke, he was already planning how to handle the situation he had witnessed. These cadets needed to learn some important lessons about respect, character, and what it truly meant to serve. Sarah listened intently to every word, unaware that her life was about to change dramatically. The general's keen eyes had seen something in her that others missed, and he was preparing to make sure the entire academy recognized it too. The opportunity came sooner than General Hayes expected. During an advanced tactical exercise, the cadets were divided into teams to complete a complex mission simulation. The scenario involved rescuing hostages from a heavily defended compound, while managing limited resources and unpredictable obstacles. Most team leaders were chosen based on popularity or family connections, rather than actual ability. Sarah was placed on Team Delta, led by Brandon Morrison, whose grandfather had been a famous war hero. Brandon immediately dismissed Sarah's strategic suggestions and assigned her to equipment duty, essentially sidelining her from the main action. General Hayes watched from the observation deck as the exercise began. Team Alpha, led by the Academy's star athlete, charged straight into the simulation without proper reconnaissance. Team Bravo got bogged down in unnecessary firefights. Team Charlie fell apart when their leader panicked under pressure. But Team Delta was struggling for a different reason. Brandon's plan was fundamentally flawed, relying on brute force rather than tactical intelligence. When Sarah tried to point out problems with their approach, he cut her off dismissively. "Just carry the equipment and follow orders," Brandon snapped. "This isn't about your opinion." The other team members exchanged glances but said nothing. They were more interested in staying on Brandon's good side than speaking up for what was obviously a better strategy. As the simulation progressed, it became clear that Team Delta was heading for disaster. Their frontal assault approach had triggered multiple alarm systems, and they were now surrounded by hostile forces with no clear escape route. Sarah watched their deteriorating position with growing frustration. She could see exactly what needed to be done, but Brandon was too proud and prejudiced to listen to her suggestions. The team was about to fail spectacularly, and everyone would suffer for his poor leadership. General Hayes leaned forward, his attention focused entirely on Sarah's reactions. He could see her analyzing the tactical situation, her mind working through possible solutions even though she had been excluded from decision-making. Finally, when it became obvious that Brandon's plan had completely collapsed, Sarah made a decision that surprised everyone. Instead of waiting for orders or seeking permission, she took charge of the situation herself. "Listen to me," she said firmly to her teammates. "If we continue following this plan, we're all going to fail. I know a way to salvage this mission, but you have to trust me and do exactly what I say." Brandon turned red with anger. "You don't have the authority to give orders. I'm the team leader." "Then lead us out of this mess," Sarah replied calmly. "Because right now your leadership is getting us all killed." The brutal honesty of her words hit home. The team members looked around at their hopeless situation, then back at Sarah. Despite their previous treatment of her, they could see that she was their only chance of success. One by one, they began, following her instructions instead of Brandon's. Sarah quickly reorganized their formation, using her knowledge of the terrain to find a hidden approach route that Brandon had completely overlooked. Her new strategy was brilliant in its simplicity. Instead of trying to fight their way through superior forces, she had identified a weakness in the enemy's positioning that would allow them to complete the rescue mission with minimal confrontation. General Hayes watched in fascination as Sarah transformed from an excluded team member into a confident leader. Her commands were clear and precise, her tactical decisions were sound, and her ability to adapt to changing circumstances was exceptional. Under her guidance, Team Delta not only escaped their impossible situation but actually completed the mission objective. They rescued the hostages, neutralized key targets, and extracted safely while the other teams were still struggling with basic problems. The simulation ended with Team Delta achieving the highest score of any team in recent Academy history. The control room fell silent as the instructors reviewed the results, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. Brandon stood in stunned silence, his face a mixture of embarrassment and grudging respect. The other team members looked at Sarah with new eyes, finally seeing past her scars to recognize the exceptional leader she had always been. But the most significant reaction came from General Hayes. As he watched Sarah debrief her team with professional skill and genuine care for their performance, he saw something that reminded him of the best officers he had ever served with. This young woman possessed that rare combination of tactical brilliance, moral courage, and natural leadership ability that could not be taught. She had taken a failing situation and turned it into a triumph, not for personal glory, but because it was the right thing to do. After the exercise, General Hayes made a note in his observation log. Sarah Martinez had just demonstrated the kind of leadership potential that the military desperately needed. Now he had to make sure that everyone else recognized it too. The cadets filed out of the simulation center, their conversations buzzing with excitement about Team Delta's unexpected victory. For the first time since arriving at the academy, Sarah found herself walking with a group instead of alone, her teammates eager to discuss the successful mission. She didn't know it yet, but her life was about to change in ways she had never imagined. General Hayes had seen enough to make his decision, and tomorrow would bring new opportunities that would finally give her the recognition she deserved. The next morning brought an unexpected announcement that changed everything. During the regular assembly, Colonel Williams stepped up to the podium with an unusual expression of excitement on his face. "Cadets, I have a special announcement," he began. "General Hayes has decided to implement a new leadership assessment program. Instead of relying solely on traditional metrics, we will be evaluating actual performance under pressure." Sarah listened with growing interest as the colonel explained the new system. Leadership positions would be assigned based on demonstrated ability rather than popularity or family connections. The simulation exercise results would be the primary factor in determining who would receive advanced training opportunities. Based on yesterday's exceptional performance, Colonel Williams continued, Cadet Martinez will be appointed as the new company commander for advanced tactical operations. The announcement hit the assembly hall like a thunderbolt. Sarah felt her heart skip a beat, unable to believe what she was hearing. Around her, other cadets turned to stare, their expressions ranging from shock to disbelief to grudging admiration. Jessica, who had always been one of the cruelest with her comments, looked absolutely stunned. Brandon Morrison's face went through several shades of red as he realized that the girl he had dismissed and marginalized was now going to outrank him significantly. After the assembly, word spread quickly throughout the academy. The girl with the scars, the one everyone had mocked and avoided, was now in a position of real authority. Some cadets were genuinely impressed by her tactical abilities, while others struggled to adjust their preconceptions. Emma, Sarah's loyal roommate, was thrilled. "I knew this day would come," she said excitedly. "You've always been the most capable person here. Now everyone else will finally see it too." But the transition wasn't easy. Some cadets who had never bothered to learn Sarah's name suddenly wanted to be her best friend. Others resented her promotion and whispered that it was just political correctness or sympathy for her appearance. Sarah handled the mixed reactions with characteristic grace and professionalism. During her first leadership meeting, she addressed the elephant in the room directly. "I know some of you have questions about my appointment," she said to the group of senior cadets. "Let me be clear. I didn't ask for this position, and I don't expect special treatment because of my scars. I'm here because of my performance, and I intend to prove that the general made the right choice." Her straightforward approach impressed even some of her former critics. Marcus, who had once questioned her physical abilities, found himself nodding in agreement with her tactical assessments during planning sessions. General Hayes watched these developments with satisfaction. He had seen this pattern before. Once people were forced to look past superficial appearances and focus on actual ability, true leaders naturally emerged. But he also knew that Sarah would face additional challenges because of her unique situation. People would scrutinize her decisions more carefully, looking for any sign of weakness or failure that would justify their previous judgments. During a private meeting with Sarah, the general offered some advice based on his own experiences. Leadership is never easy, he told her, but it's especially difficult when people are waiting for you to fail. The key is to focus on doing the right thing, regardless of what others think or say. Sarah appreciated his guidance, but she also had her own insights to share. The hardest part isn't dealing with people who openly oppose me, she explained. It's handling those who pretend to support me now, but were cruel before. I have to decide whether to hold grudges or give people a chance to change. The general was impressed by her maturity and wisdom. Many experienced officers struggled with similar issues, yet this young cadet was already thinking through the complexities of leadership with remarkable clarity. As Sarah settled into her new role, she began implementing changes that impressed everyone, including her former detractors. Her training programs were more effective than anything the academy had seen before. Her strategic planning was innovative yet practical. Her ability to motivate and inspire others was becoming legendary. During one particularly challenging exercise, even Jessica found herself following Sarah's orders without question. When the mission was completed successfully, Jessica approached Sarah afterward. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. "I said some terrible things about you and I was completely wrong. You're not just a good leader. You're the best leader we have." Sarah accepted the apology graciously, but she also made it clear that real change required more than words. "Apologies are a good start," she replied, "but what matters is how we treat people going forward. Everyone deserves respect, regardless of how they look or where they come from." The conversation marked a turning point in the academy's culture. Other cadets began following Sarah's example, focusing on character and ability rather than superficial judgments. The cruel comments and social exclusion that had once been common became increasingly rare. General Hayes observed these changes with growing pride. Sarah wasn't just succeeding as a leader, she was transforming the entire environment around her. Her influence was creating the kind of military culture that he had always hoped to foster. But the greatest test was yet to come. An opportunity was approaching that would put all of Sarah's skills to the ultimate challenge and determine whether she was ready for the responsibilities that awaited her beyond the academy walls. The ultimate test arrived in the form of an emergency that no one had anticipated. During a routine training exercise in the mountains, a severe storm struck the region, cutting off communications and creating dangerous conditions that threatened the safety of multiple cadet teams scattered across the wilderness. General Hayes received the first emergency report just after midnight. Weather conditions were deteriorating rapidly, with heavy snow, high winds, and temperatures dropping well below freezing. 3 teams of cadets were stranded in different locations, and standard rescue protocols would take hours to organize. "Sir, we need to launch immediate search and rescue operations," Colonel Williams said urgently. "Some of those cadets have been exposed to these conditions for over 6 hours already." General Hayes studied the weather reports and terrain maps with growing concern. This was exactly the kind of crisis that could turn deadly very quickly, if not handled properly. They needed someone who could coordinate a complex rescue operation under extreme pressure. "Where's Cadet Martinez?" he asked. Within minutes, Sarah was in the command center, fully dressed and alert despite being awakened in the middle of the night. She quickly absorbed the situation briefing, her mind already working through possible solutions. "The main problem is coordination," she analyzed. "We have limited visibility, unreliable communications, and multiple teams in distress. We need to prioritize based on which group is in the most immediate danger." General Hayes was impressed by her calm professionalism under pressure. While other senior cadets might have panicked or frozen up, Sarah was already developing a systematic approach to the crisis. "I'm putting you in charge of the rescue coordination," he told her. "You'll have access to all available resources and personnel. What do you need?" Sarah didn't hesitate. "I need topographical experts, weather analysts, and the best search teams we have." And I want Brandon Morrison and his team. They know the mountain terrain better than anyone else. The mention of Brandon surprised everyone, including Brandon himself. Despite their past conflicts and his initial resentment of her promotion, Sarah was choosing him for one of the most critical roles in the rescue operation. Brandon approached her with a mixture of respect and uncertainty. "Martinez, about what happened before, we'll deal with that later." Sarah cut him off firmly. "Right now, people's lives are at stake, and I need your expertise. Can I count on you?" Brandon nodded, his expression serious. "Absolutely, what do you need me to do?" Sarah quickly organized the rescue teams, assigning specific responsibilities based on each person's strengths rather than their rank or social status. Marcus, who had once questioned her abilities, found himself leading a technical rescue team. Jessica was put in charge of communications coordination. The rescue operation began at dawn, with teams deploying into dangerous conditions that tested everyone's skills and endurance. Sarah remained in the command center, coordinating movements and making critical decisions as new information came in. When the first team was located, they were hypothermic and disoriented but alive. The rescue went smoothly, with Brandon's team executing a perfect extraction under Sarah's guidance. The second team presented more challenges. They had taken shelter in a cave but were trapped by a rock slide. Sarah had to coordinate both a climbing rescue and medical evacuation while managing deteriorating weather conditions. Throughout the crisis, Sarah demonstrated the kind of leadership that inspired everyone around her. Her decisions were quick but thoughtful, her communications were clear and decisive, and her ability to adapt to changing circumstances was exceptional. General Hayes watched from the command center, occasionally offering advice but mostly letting Sarah handle the operation herself. He was witnessing something rare, a natural leader performing at the highest level under extreme pressure. The third team was the most difficult to reach. They had taken shelter in an abandoned cabin, but their location was in an avalanche-prone area that required extreme caution to approach safely. "I can get a small team in there," Brandon reported over the radio. "But the conditions are really dangerous. One wrong move could trigger a slide that buries everyone." Sarah studied the terrain maps and weather reports, weighing the risks against the necessity of immediate action. The stranded cadets were running out of time, but a failed rescue attempt could make the situation much worse. "Take the rescue team in, but use the eastern approach," she decided. "It's longer but safer. And maintain constant radio contact. If conditions change even slightly, you extract immediately." Her plan worked perfectly. Brandon's team reached the stranded cadets safely and brought them out without incident. By late afternoon, all missing personnel had been accounted for and were receiving proper medical care. The rescue operation was completed with 0 casualties and minimal injuries, despite extremely challenging conditions. Everyone involved knew that Sarah's leadership had been the crucial factor in the successful outcome. After the crisis was over, General Hayes called Sarah into his office for a private debriefing. "That was exceptional work, Cadet Martinez. You handled a life-and-death situation with the skill of an experienced officer." Sarah was grateful for the recognition, but she was also thinking about the broader implications of what had happened. "Sir, this operation succeeded because everyone worked together regardless of past conflicts or personal differences. That's what real military service is supposed to be about." The general smiled, recognizing the wisdom in her words. This young woman had not only saved lives through her tactical skills, but had also demonstrated the kind of character that the military desperately needed in its future leaders. News of the successful rescue spread quickly throughout the military community, bringing Sarah recognition far beyond the academy walls. But more importantly, it had proven to everyone at the academy that true leadership had nothing to do with appearance and everything to do with courage, competence, and character. 6 months later, the academy graduation ceremony was unlike any other in its history. Sarah Martinez stood at the front of the class, not as the girl who had once been mocked and isolated, but as the cadet commander who had earned the respect and admiration of everyone around her. The transformation hadn't just been in how others saw her. Sarah herself had grown into the confident leader that General Hayes had recognized from the beginning. Her scars were still there, but now they were viewed by her classmates as marks of courage rather than objects of ridicule. General Hayes delivered the keynote address, speaking about the importance of looking beyond surface appearances to recognize true character. Though he never mentioned Sarah by name, everyone in the audience understood who had inspired his message. The military's greatest strength, he told the assembled graduates and their families, lies not in our weapons or technology, but in our people. Real leaders emerge not from privilege or appearance, but from their actions when it matters most. As the ceremony progressed, award after award was announced. Sarah received recognition for academic excellence, tactical innovation, and outstanding leadership. But the moment that moved her most was when her younger brother Tommy stepped forward to pin her final insignia. "I always knew you were a hero," he whispered as he attached the medal to her uniform. "Now everyone else knows it too." Sarah's parents watched with tears in their eyes, remembering the scared 12-year-old girl who had run into a burning building to save her brother. That same courage and selflessness had carried her through years of cruel treatment and transformed her into the remarkable leader she had become. After the ceremony, many of her former critics approached to congratulate her. Brandon Morrison, now genuinely humble, shook her hand warmly. "I learned more about leadership from watching you than from all my other instructors combined," he admitted. Jessica, who had once made cruel comments about Sarah's appearance, was among the most sincere in her praise. "You changed all of us," she said. "Not just how we see you, but how we see everyone. That's going to stay with us for the rest of our careers." But perhaps the most meaningful conversation came when General Hayes pulled Sarah aside for a private moment. "I have something to tell you," he said quietly. "When I first saw you being mistreated here, it reminded me of someone I served with years ago. His name was Martinez, too." "Any relation?" Sarah's eyes widened with surprise. "My uncle Carlos served in the military. He was badly injured in an explosion while saving his squad." General Hayes nodded solemnly. "He was one of the bravest soldiers I ever knew, but he left the service because of how some people treated him afterward. I always regretted not doing more to support him back then." "He never talked much about his military service," Sarah replied, "but he always encouraged me to follow my dreams no matter what obstacles I faced." "Your uncle would be incredibly proud of what you've accomplished," the general said. "You've not only succeeded despite the challenges you faced, you've made everyone around you better in the process." As the day concluded, Sarah found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The cruel comments and social isolation had been painful, but they had also taught her important lessons about resilience, empathy, and the true nature of strength. She thought about all the people who had underestimated her because of her scars, and how their judgment had been so completely wrong. But she also thought about those who had grown and changed, learning to see past surface appearances to recognize character and ability. The academy itself had transformed during her time there. The culture of exclusion and superficial judgment had given way to one that valued merit and character above all else. Future students would benefit from the changes that her example had helped inspire. Emma, her loyal roommate and friend, joined her as she packed her belongings for the final time. "Remember when you almost quit during that first semester?" Emma asked with a smile. Sarah laughed at the memory. "It feels like a lifetime ago. I'm so glad I stayed and fought through it." "The military is getting an incredible officer," Emma said seriously. "But more than that, you're going to inspire other people who face similar challenges. Your story proves that courage and character matter more than anything else." As Sarah prepared to leave the academy for her first assignment, she carried with her more than just academic knowledge and military training. She had learned that real strength comes not from avoiding criticism or fitting in with the crowd, but from staying true to your values, even when it's difficult. Her scars would always be with her, but they no longer defined how others saw her. Instead, she was known for her tactical brilliance, her inspirational leadership, and her unwavering commitment to doing what was right. General Hayes watched from his office window as the new graduates departed, feeling proud of the role he had played in Sarah's transformation. He had learned something important too, that sometimes the best thing a leader can do is simply recognize potential in others and give them the opportunity to prove themselves. Years later, when Sarah had become a decorated officer leading her own units, she would often think back to those difficult days at the academy. The experience had taught her to look beyond appearances and give everyone a chance to show their true character. Her own journey from mockery to respect had become a powerful reminder that real leadership comes from within, not from what others see on the surface.